need a flashlight.
Do you need a pen?
No, I got one in here too, but that's a bonus.
It's 7:02 or 7:02 on January 5th, 2021. Call the meeting to order. Currently, we have a quorum. So happy New Year to everybody. Welcome back. And before we get started, I just wanted to shout out to the volunteers that put on the fireworks show this year in Portsmouth. That was pretty spectacular. Probably one of the best ones I've ever seen. So great way to start the year and a great way to end the old year. We have no delegation this evening. I don't believe we have anyone joining us on the phone. Are there any declarations of financial interest? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Cox?
I move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Second by Councillor MacArthur. Any discussion? Seeing none, show of hands in favor. It's carried unanimously. The December 1st, 2020 minutes are in the package. Is there any issues with the minutes or business arising? Councillor MacArthur?
Yeah, I do have one question. Oh, and a comment. The fireworks were totally awesome, by the way. I do have one question. I just haven't seen anywhere on social media who won the decoration house lights contest. I'm curious.
That's someone from the council committee that spent their. Yeah, Paul Park.
Gillis.
Gillis.
Warren Gillis, and then
Ken.
Ken Murphy, then honorable mention was Leonard and Mary.
So, catch the honorable mention.
Leonard and Mary Cardinal.
Claire and Mary Cardinal. Ken Mercury was third place. Warren and Leslie Gillis second place, and Paul Clark and Delphine Pollard were first place. I'm pretty sure you can see their place from space on Google Earth.
Yeah.
Pretty spectacular. Thank you to everyone that participated in that. Did you have a comment, Councilor MacArthur?
Yeah, just one other one. Hats off to ITI for opening up Queen's Park and to the town for two lots in there decorated. It was totally awesome this year, and I must say the town councilors and mayor did a better job than the council.
Thank you, Councilor MacArthur. You're absolutely right. Despite the COVID measures, the community was fully embraced the festive spirit in some spectacular new ways, which may or may not become traditions. But I think all the residents really enjoyed that, and of course the Santa float as well. You know, and all the volunteers who are involved in that every year, especially at -35 for 10 straight days in December leading up to Christmas. Thank you to everyone who was involved. Anything further from the December corporate services minutes? Okay, seeing nothing, we have business and values and strategic plan, which are always in your package. If council wants to speak specifically to any issues there, we do have our council priorities coming up in a moment. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to council priorities. Bylaw review committee. Who would like to speak to the bylaw review committee? Mr. Marston?
I would just, since the last update, the committee workshop through some aspects of the bylaw, but the next official meeting of the bylaw review committee is not to occur until next week.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, see, Councilor Campbell.
Did we get any more people from the general public applying for it?
For council honorarium?
No, for the bylaw committee.
For the review of council honorarium? Yeah. I'm not sure, Mr. Morrison?
We did try and make our advertising flashier and more informative, and we still don't have any expressions of interest. And so, I think come council meeting in the January cycle, council will have to decide if they we wish to find different ways to solicit members of the public or whether the one member is satisfactory.
Thank you. So if you know anybody who you think might be interested, put a plug in their ear. Communications Committee, Councilor Fox?
Our December meeting for the Communications Committee, we primarily discussed topics for the January newsletter and topics for the share messaging about on our council social media accounts. Something for council to consider is any feedback any councillors have for what we can do with our brown bag lunch to encourage residents to engage with mayor and council would be much appreciated. We did have a Zoom. We attempted to have our brown bag lunch via Zoom last month, and we did not have anyone outside the council join us. So any suggestions or feedback would be much appreciated as the Communications Committee considers the next steps. We will do the brown bag lunch as scheduled for January, but certainly looking for suggestions for how to get more residents to engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fox. So just to refresh my memory, because I wasn't here for most of November, I think that's 3 straight brown bag lunches, which have been sparsely attended or not attended at all by members of the public.
So the December one via Zoom was the first one without anyone, but yes, the 3 meetings prior to that, September, October, and November, we had one resident attend each of those meetings that were in person in the arena, in the foyer of the arena.
Thank you, Councilor Fox. Any further discussion for Communications Committee? Oh, Councilor Westfall. For those of you at home, the heating is working in here. Councilor Westfall is just choosing to keep his jacket on.
Yeah, thank you. The heating in my store doesn't, so it's been a cold couple of days, and I am currently trying to stay nice and toasty warm. Yeah, I just think as somebody who kind of advocated and continues to believe in the importance of the question period, even though it goes often unattended, this one's a little bit more challenging. I think we worse because of COVID. I think if anything, it's kind of killed by COVID. But there's an interesting. I think the success would almost be to go and meet people, to ride out to meet them at either restaurants or other places, and sort of come to people. But you can't do that in this environment. That's really sort of an unfortunate situation, I think. Because I think another meeting, similar to our attended meetings here, same time, same place, 3 times a week, or 3 times a month, then they're not exactly wildly attended either. There's some neat things you could do with a lunchtime meeting though, but I think that COVID's kind of damper on that, right? Our engagement face to face with people should be somewhat limited as it is, and then our ability to sort of go where the action is probably not wise either. So it's one of those great ideas. I think this might just have to see either suffer through COVID or maybe wait until we're allowed to maybe more actively engage in settings that have people already in them without having to worry about occupancy and distancing and masks and so on and so forth. That's just 2 cents at all. But
Thank you, Councilor Westfall. Councilor Bollinger?
Yeah, during the holidays, I found out a few things about our brown bag lunches and communication with the community. I found that a lot of people in the older generation don't have technology, or if they do, they don't have YouTube and Town of Portsmouth system on their phone. So we're losing a lot of interest there. And I don't see very much paper posters, which they're interested in. But they said if they can see it in the stores and stuff, they would come to them.
Thank you. I think that as Councilor Westphal spoke to already, I think this is a COVID-related challenge. I mean, council has typically relied on community events like the Portsmouth Trade Show to set up a large booth and have engagement where you have a large amount of population coming through, and then put open houses at the rec center, and there's challenges around that. So you default to technology, which may not be accessible to everybody. So it's a very, very valid point for the communications community to consider. Thank you for that feedback. Anything else on the communications committee? Seeing nothing, we have a post-secondary education committee. Maybe I'll ask Councilor Couvret to speak to this.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I didn't take any notes specifically, so I'll just quickly glance at the minutes that were provided in the package. The main focus of our discussion at the last post-secondary education meeting was about the delay that the GNWT, the Minister of Department of Education, is doing with respect to the appointment of a board of governors for the Aurora College. It's been expressed by ourselves, Counselor Smith, City of Yellowknife. I believe several of the Aboriginal governments even brought forward the suggestion that the appointment of a board of governors for the college is something that should be given higher priority. Yet the government still been coming forward, and their last document sort of gave a timeline of September 2022, I believe, was for the appointment of the board. So a lot of our discussion was working with the City of Yellowknife and the town of Renewlake, which our mayor was meeting with later that day, to try and determine how they can put pressure on the minister and Department of Education to actually move that forward. We thought it's imperative that the board be there in place to provide some form of oversight of what's happening with the transformation process with the 10 bureaucrats in Yellowknife. Unfortunately, Madam Mayor isn't here tonight to give us an update on how that telephone meeting went. So hopefully at the next meeting we can ask her to provide us a bit of an update on that. Another topic that we have been talking about several months and are looking at ways to try and move forward is the idea of having we refer to it as a TED Talk or a TED session, to be able to engage people and other levels of government across the NWT in an open discussion about the future of post-secondary education in the NWT. The GNWT, Department of Education, and the transformation team don't seem to be terribly eager to engage a very general public discussion about what they've put out already. Like it seems everything that's been coming out is coming out of this bureaucracy of 10 people in Yellowknife saying, oh, this is what it's going to look like. And there hasn't been real engagement, an open forum for real engagement. And this is not only a criticism from ourselves, City of Yellowknife and Newbig, but several of the Indigenous governments and other post-secondary, don't want to say institutes in the NWT, have also criticized the process. So we're still grappling with how to move this forward, who we can engage to help facilitate such a discussion where the public and other concerned organizations can have this frank and open discussion that isn't governed by or isn't being driven by the bureaucracy in the transformation team. And that was, yeah, we spent quite a bit of time talking about those two things at the last committee meeting. So I think that about covers it.
Thank you, Councilor Gregory. Questions or comments? Councilor Gregory?
Yeah, I've mentioned this before, when we've been talking about the subject is, I think this is a critical, opportunity and circumstance for our community. The transformation, process and the future of post-secondary education, in the NWP, and what does it look like for our community in the future. I'm not overly optimistic looking at a lot of the documentation that's been coming out of the transformation office in Yellowknife. They've seen, like just previously stated, it seems they preordained what the future of this college, or not college, Polytech is going to be. And I think as a community and as a council, we need to pay a lot more attention to how this is being developed. I'm quite concerned. It's been 3 months since we heard any last update from that office. I'm just terrified of what they're going to come out with next. The minister doesn't seem to be providing the public readily available updates. If you go onto the website, the last thing posted is from early November. So I'm just would like to encourage more members of our council here to get involved in discussions with the post-secondary education committee, and that we really need to put this very high on our agenda regarding our priorities over the next 8-10 months of our term.
Thank you, Councilor Garrett. I think one of the discussion points from the minutes was to invite the president, current president, Annie Bevan, to talk to council about the implementation plan. Cognizant that Minister Simpson has said he doesn't want to be overly active or fears of seen as interfering in the process. So it seems to make sense to get specific questions about the role of Smash Campus within the transformation. Perhaps the president would be better suited to speak to those. And the mayor was going to discuss that issue with the mayors of Yellowknife and Inuvik to see if the request could come from all three communities, that the president spoke to all three communities, provided that kind of level of update, but I'm unsure of the status of that conversation. Any further discussion on post-secondary education committee? So next we have fire abatement. Oh, sorry, Councilor Durant.
Yeah, actually it's not related to post-secondary education committee, but it is regarding the council priorities. I believe a couple of meetings ago we talked about the need for council to sit down and do a review and evaluation and review of our priorities. And I'd like to see us set a date for that as soon as possible. And with the clock ticking on the life of our term, I think this is something that we should try to accommodate sometime this month.
Yeah, thank you for that. Is there any, we did discuss that. There's ostensibly 8 months left in the term. You can't really be passing a lot of things in the last month of your mandate. Despite what the GNWP tends to do with all of their legislation that they bring forward in the last month. Does anyone have any ideas about how that might look, Councilor Fox?
What about the fourth Tuesday of the month?
Councilor Russell?
What about we just leave it? Because changing our priorities with 8 months to go in term of council when we have nothing to do but pave our streets and finish a massive amount of capital projects, as well as, finish through a pandemic. Maybe we just we already have our priorities already sitting on our table on our debt kind of budget. It feels like there's a pretty straightforward path actually to complete our term without readjusting priorities that we won't actually have time to effectively make change on.
Rec center renovations also, are fairly substantial projects as well.
The massive capital project.
There's a lot on the books depending on the funding applications, but even without the funding applications, there's still a paving program and a rec center renovation. Ms. Morrison?
There is a well thought out list of council priorities, as Councillor Westwell has stated. However, there may also be a need to strategize or refocus on existing priorities. If what we're hearing, for example, from Councillor Goubret is the need to put more horsepower behind the post-secondary initiatives. Perhaps there is a need for just a workshopping session with council to talk about how you wish to refocus on existing strategies.
Ms. Morrison? And certainly, it can be done as almost like a self-evaluation tool. When this was identified as a priority, what was the expected outcome? What's the progress? What's the status? And what's realistic to accomplish in the next 8 months? And is this something that actually needs councils, or does council need to worry more about public engagement around the rec center renovations, for instance? Councilor Collins.
Well, I agree with Councillor Westwell's sentiments. I think you made valid points. Certainly, I do also think there is value in us getting together. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It can be a workshop. To just assess where we are with our existing priorities and what we need to focus on for the next 8 months, and what we will not be focusing on for the next 8 months, because we won't be able to. And I think there should be some consensus among council about what that will look like, because I think it will help us in our discussions during our committee and regular council meetings that we develop. So I do think there is value, whether or not we want to do it on an evening on the last Tuesday of the month, or maybe a lunch meeting to make it more focused. I know those are also sometimes difficult, but I do think there's value in a self-evaluation, as the deputy mayor described.
Councilor Westwell?
The masks don't afford my sarcastic smirks. So if I could, I guess, rationalize my big wet blanket, I totally support the idea of us sort of thing. We've got 8 months left. We've identified priorities we've been working on for the last 8 years or 4 years. So let's try to 3 years, right? Try to complete those ongoing priorities in a way that makes most use of our time, our efforts, how we can help. What I don't think, though, is we don't want to add new feather in the cap projects. Try to find a way to complete our term with something outside of what we've already got on irons in the fire. We need to try to figure out how we can support administration the most effectively to complete what we've already assigned. And that's, my big white blanket of idea. Let's talk about new priorities for council, because we've only got 8 months left, is not necessarily, I don't look for redirections. We want to figure out how we're going to best use our time. That makes complete sense. But anyway.
Thank you, Councilor. So I beg to disagree with you. I do think the sarcastic smirk came true. But how about I suggest that we use email as a tool to canvass people's schedules and look at an optimal time for a workshop where we discuss this from a governance level. Perhaps the then clerk can assist as well. And we can figure this out at some point in the next couple of weeks. So the clear intent is not to add more projects to administration. The clear intent is to refocus the role of government of the town of Portsmouth and what of these priorities are, what should we be doing in the final stages of our mandate to best achieve the priorities that we've identified. There's a lot of post-secondary education committee. I think we're moving on to fire abatement. Mr. Morrison, do you have an update on some of the work the contractors have been doing around the community?
I've been advised that I think all work is complete. And I know that one of the last parts of the work that was occurring around West Grove was there had been some material staged in the old soccer field. My understanding is that has been removed. So those that wish to go and put an outdoor rink there are free to proceed. And we'll even put the equipment into it to clear the site for those that wish to put the outdoor rink there. So there has been some background dialogue about that. That was the site that the volunteer group had chosen to put the facility. Other than that, we're still waiting to hear back on land. If the mayor was going to speak to the Department of Lands about perhaps reassessing the delays associated with fire abating on commissioners' land to finish the existing fire breaks. ENR does have a substantial amount of money to do the work. However, the time that would have taken to process the lease applications, et cetera, would have pushed them out of the fiscal year. So we are running out of that fiscal year now. So if we don't get timely response, then we're going to have to find another project to spend that money. So we're hoping to hear back soon on that.
Thank you. I'll follow up with the mayor to see if that conversation's happening with lands. Quick questions or comments on the fire abatement? This might be the 1 year that we need a flood abatement committee. The way that things are going on there. Snowpack. Ms. Morrison, do you have an update on the daycare?
We'll save the lion's share of the lifting on that one for community services meeting next week. I would note that I think we have 6 participants in the program currently. We are running drop-ins now, so people who have only half-day needs, i.e. due to junior kindergarten or closures elsewhere, can now participate in our programming. We're looking to review our pricing structure to allow different opportunities for residents, monthly rates, weekly rates, etc. We have been working with EC&E, and the current space is not suitable for infants. It doesn't provide the isolation required for nap time. And so at this point, while we are preparing to be able to manage infants, right now we can do toddlers over 2 years, to be able to do infants in the existing space, we can't do it. We would be able to do it in the renovated space once that work is done, but with the space we currently have available to us, which is the party room, the games room, and the crafts room, we can't do infants. There are other spaces available in the building that are currently unused that would be suitable. However, they are not available to us.
Thank you. I think the names of the spaces themselves explain why they're not suitable: party room, games room, they're not napping spaces. Questions or comments on the daycare? It's nice to see that the numbers are slowly rising. From what I understand, there's a number of people re-entering the workforce that in need of childcare in the next few weeks or few months that hopefully will boost enrollments further. Mr. Morrison.
We hope so, right? We're not where we wanted to be. Our assessment wasn't based on a pandemic where there are a lot of people still working from home that are sort of doing sort of their own childcare off the corner of their desk. That hasn't stopped us from inquiring into why perhaps we haven't seen the uptake that we expected. And we are hearing that our pricing at $10 a day above the rest of the market is precluding or slowing down enrollment. Having said that, a lot of the other day homes aren't at capacity either, again due to COVID. But since we are up and running, we are looking at seeing whether we can find some efficiencies, and we hope to do some evaluation after 6 months, after a year, to see if we can find efficiencies that may result in in reduced daily costs to residents, as well as some of the other initiatives I've already talked to you about, changing pricing, payment schemes, partial day drop-ins. One of the things I'm noticing just anecdotally is that we're a small enough community that we're very subject to trends where kids tend to happen in waves, it seems. Right now, we're seeing a lot of, say, toddler-age children that we might be able to intake, but they all have infant-age siblings. And so the people that have to find childcare for both are going to put them in the same facility and not split them between two facilities. I mean, anecdotally, I have 2 staff members, 4 kids right there that are in that situation. And so, we're trying to figure out how much of it is sort of trends in who has kids, which is one of the reasons why we're starting to look harder at infants to be able to provide that level of convenience. But right now, as I stated, the facility isn't being suitable. There's just not enough isolation space for the little ones to have naps.
Thank you. I think it also needs to be pointed out, a reminder that the college not having regular full-time classes on campus is probably a very large driver on enrollment levels as well. Using classes at home, it's a different setup. But hopefully, as the vaccination schedule warms up over the next couple of months, we will be returning to some level of normalcy. So if there's anything else, we'll move on to community recreation center renovations. Again, Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. So no change since my last update. Work continues in the basement. It's full steam ahead. My understanding is to bring the shelves up in the storage room. We're still waiting for pricing so that we can bring the updated designs to council with the cost information associated with any of the proposed changes that were outside of the original scope. And just while we're talking about recreation center, we broke the pool again over Christmas. So it was the same mechanism of failure as we had previously, but in a different place. And so what it is our pool is an in-ground pool, but instead of being a monolithic concrete pool like you're used to in the old days, it's a metal pellet set in sand. And it has all these pipes going into it from different places that draw water in, suck water out, etc. Well, what we're seeing is that the pool is shifting a little bit, and it's shearing and cracking the pipes going in and out. The way the design is such, so not only is set at sand, but then it's covered with a concrete slab and tiled over. So when we find out there is a leak, which we normally find because the adjacent basement starts getting water leaking through the walls, we actually have to find that leak, which is not an easy thing when it's a broken pipe buried 3 feet in sand with a 6-inch slab of concrete and a layer of tile over top of it. And then once we find the leak, we have to pull off the tile, chip off the concrete, excavate the sand, fix the pipe, reverse the process. And then once we're done, we have to get the environmental health officer to approve everything to make sure it's safe to put people back in. So the first time it broke, we remember the pool was down for quite a while. That's because we had to figure out how to find leaks and how to go about the whole repair. We're much better at it now, so the pool will be down for only, I think, 2 to 3 weeks. The repairs have been made in this case. The break occurred just before Christmas. Repairs have been made. Concrete has been poured. We're just in the process of getting the tiles installed and seeking environmental health officer approvals. So we're getting a lot quicker at it. And when we repair it in a way that it's easy to go back and fix it in the future if it breaks, unlike how it was initially designed, if that makes sense. So if it ever fails again, it's a matter of pulling up a panel, going down and fixing it, and putting the panel back in place. So we're basically going to keep on moving ahead, and every time something breaks, we might see a couple of weeks downtime to go in and fix it, and then we know that area will always be easy to repair in the future. What I've been told is that we have the same pool that was installed in Inuvik, and I don't know if any councilors followed the news several years ago, or it took Inuvik years to get the pool up and running again. So we're encountering the same problems, but hopefully we're ahead of it. So pool will be open hopefully in under a week. I don't have an exact date yet, but the work is almost complete.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Nuvik swimming pool is down for a year, and I believe it's down to 6 months currently right now for more extensive repairs that aren't possible to accomplish without just taking the pool fully offline. Makes sense to do that in the most expensive operating season. Questions or comments on recreation center renovations or the pool repairs? No, well, thank you for that update, Ms. Morrison. I think we're still with you, Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I'm not sure if there's any further updates. I know that the government of the Northwest Territories did announce something, I believe, in early December around moving to meet the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I'm not sure if that filters down to municipal government in any kind of meaningful way, but I'm not sure if you have an update.
Nothing that we've heard. I saw on Cabin Radio as well, the announcement regarding adopting the UN proclamation. I think we did this last year. But we are in the process of starting to engage in their training. We hope to have the cultural awareness and sensitivity training rolling out to staff probably in the first quarter.
Thank you. It brings us to the end of council priorities. Anything else from council? Nothing, we'll move on. We have a director's report. So we're back to you, Mr. Morrison.
Everyone for a moment.
Yes.
That's okay.
Thank you, sir. Happy New Year, everyone. For January 2020, a few things that I have on my plate. One is working on a year-end report required by the auditors for the property tax accounts. Two, working with Marker and the Board of Revision for 2020 and preparing briefing notes for the SEO. Three, preparing assessment for the preparing assessment appeals to go to the Board of Revision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morrison. Sorry, Mr. Morrison.
Oh, I'd just like to add, if it's possible to give a shout out to the GNWT. They got their assessment roll out very early this year. And so it's allowed us to advance a lot of files when they should be advanced instead of when they normally are. By having the assessment information so easily, I think it made my job of informing council of potential property tax increases a lot easier, because I could be a lot more specific than just kind of throwing generalities out. We could speak to the actual impact on households once we had the assessment roll information. And so, yeah, thank you to the GNWT for getting that information to us in such a timely manner.
Thank you for that, Mr. Morrison. We're not familiar ground there. We're not usually shouting out commendment to the GNWT, but in terms of how that impacts the municipal corporation's ability to levy property taxes, that is really good news. In the package on the director's report, there's the accounts paid list, there's a list of correspondence and a licensing report, and I'm not sure if any councilors have questions or comments based on the director's report or the attachments. Councilor Quebec, did you have your hand? I'm sorry. Thank you. Councilor Quebec.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question is, it is on two subjects. One, can we expect a further update on the tax sales process? And secondly, we've been waiting a bit to hear or be provided an update on the aged accounts. And I'm just wondering what the timelines for council to see something further on those two documents.
Thank you, Councilor Morrison.
Thank you. Yeah, the intent was to bring the aged information forward once the property tax stuff got sorted out, because depending on the direction council wanted to take with forgiveness on property tax and tax arrears issues, that would then turn around and inform the aged accounts, right? Because if you transfer a property tax debt into a normal debt, it then falls into the aged accounts file. So the first step would be to talk about property tax In this case, what we're doing now is we're just in the process of resolving people who are on payment plans who defaulted on their payment plans during the pandemic to make sure, the level of understanding of the impact of their default during the pandemic. And so we sent out notifications to all affected people, all those that were on payment plans that defaulted since the pandemic started last February and March, and the responses are still trickling in. Once we have that information, we'll be able to provide a more informed briefing with the council with the tax list and supporting information. Perhaps for municipal services next week, so the council can set a date as we discussed in December for, I think we were talking April. But if we can't get the information to you in time, then we'll have to shift another month. But we're hoping to get it to you next week. And another response we get from the residents.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Supplemental, Councilor Brewer. Any further questions, comments on the director's report or the information items within the package? Okay, seeing none, we then move into bylaw policy review and development. 7A is annual borrowing bylaw 1011. Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. This will be the second or the third time council's seen this, but if you don't remember it, I don't blame you. It's sort of bureaucratic trivia piece. What happens is the territorial legislation basically states that the town can't go into debt. We can't borrow money without approval of the public. That's why, for example, when we renovated the arena, we had to go out to plebiscite and get the public, the residents, to approve the debenture where we borrowed money. Well, the town also maintains what is called short-term debt. This is your line of credit or your overdraft that you would have on your own personal banking accounts. We have something similar as the town, things that, due to cash flow issues, if money hasn't shifted from one account to another account, we have the ability to go into debt. So this is called short-term debt. This is different than long-term borrowing like a mortgage like we did at the arena. This is short-term, matter of weeks, up to a year. This is our line of credit or our overdraft protection. And territorial legislation allows us to maintain these protections provided we pass a bylaw. This is the bylaw before council. This bylaw gets passed annually.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Or Councilor Fox, you were moving the motion?
I move that the 2021 annual borrowing bylaw 1011 be brought to the regular meeting of council on January 19th, 2021 for first and second reading.
Thank you. Councilor Campbell, you second that? Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, show of hands in favor. That is carried unanimously. We'll discuss that on January 19th. Next, we have the 2021 Consolidated Rates and Fees Bylaw 1012. Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. The town has a number of bylaws that have payments associated with them, whether it's bylaws that regulate water and the costs associated with water, or bylaws that regulate the use of the landfill and the costs associated with the landfill. From time to time, council chooses, typically through the budget process, but it can happen any time of the year, to change those rates. In order to avoid having to change the main bylaws every time the rates change, what we've done is we've taken the rates and fees out of all of our bylaws and compiled it into one document, Consolidated Rates and Fees Bylaw. So whenever council chooses to say revise incomes by changing user fees, we just update the one bylaw instead of multiple bylaws. Council has seen this bylaw a number of times. As per the budget that was approved by council last December, they approved increases to some utility and some environmental fees. And so this bylaw reflects the changes as approved by council.
Thank you. Looking for someone to move the motion, move the recommendation. Councilor Westphal.
Since everyone's pointing at you, I wasn't sure if there was all hands up pointing. I move that the 2021 consolidated rates and fees bylaw 1012 be brought to regular meeting of council January 19th, 2021 for first and second reading.
Seconded. Second, Councilor Campbell. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor McBride?
Yeah, I was going through the bylaw, over the weekend, and it was just wondering if, administration would be able to provide council with some, additional information regarding, the sponsorship and, donation component of the, bylaw rates. What I'd be interested in is, how effective, has the town been at soliciting or receiving sponsorships? So basically, if we could get some information regarding, revenues that the town's receiving from sponsorships, and as well as related to advertising. And then the second item that I had with regards to this is, I'm just wondering whether this document should also include, what the town collects for interest on overdue accounts.
I believe the interest and overdue accounts is dealt with within another bylaw. It just may have failed to me at this particular moment, but it's the one dealing with, land, yeah. So, sorry, my reflection on the sponsorship program was a lot of work put into this by administration about a year and a half ago. My reflection is that the rollout was kind of looking towards last winter and kind of ran into COVID, but I'm not sure if Mr. Morrison is prepared to offer more details at this particular moment.
Thank you. Yeah, we've not seen a lot of revenue. I think the one place where we've seen some sponsorship participation is in our recreation guide, our community recreation guide that went out, where we worked with local groups to get their advertising in the document. There was a lot of in-kind there in that support. So I don't think we've had a lot of success with it, but then again, we haven't had, most of the sponsorship is tied around use of recreation facilities, and there's not been a lot of recreation recently. The other thing I would note is that we are in talks with the Community Services Advisory Board about when it comes to our sponsorship of other organizations, about again ensuring that there is that the other organizations provide services to all demographics within the community. So we're looking at that aspect too. As far as we don't see interest as a revenue, and so that's not really sitting in rates and fees, as the deputy mayor stated. That's sitting in other legislation, and so we don't budget for that amount of money. It's not something that's said in this document. However, I know that there has been dialogue around it actually about potentially changing the amount of interest we earn. When we speak to interest, most of our utilities, there is no interest collected on water and sewer. There is only the threat of disconnect after 2 months. We have interest on some of our other things, such as ambulance recoveries and whatnot. And then, of course, the big one is property tax, and that rate gets set. So, anyways, if this is a place the council wishes to go, this is certainly something we can bring to the next corporate services meeting. I have heard dialogue from Councillor Coubret that says that, while our interest rates seem high, they are not untoward, and they are on par with other communities. If there is a problem with interest, it's just that people aren't paying their bills, and so the interest is building up. But that is a problem with interest everywhere.
Thank you for that supplemental, Councillor Coubret. No? Good information. Further discussions or comments from council on the motion recommendations on the floor? Solid rates and fees. Seeing none, can I get a show of hands in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Back to administration for our COVID-19 update.
Thank you very much. So I forward the information I get to council. as soon as I get it. From what we've been seeing, there's been some cases, none in Fort Smith, all tied to non-resident workers. They come up, they meet the territorial guidelines and isolate, and it doesn't spread. There has been less information flow from the GNWP. There has been a bit of, from what I can see, change in how they disseminate their information. There's less information getting sent direct to me per se, or direct to other agencies, and they're doing more of their information release through the NWTAC, through the regular meetings they have with the mayors and council. And so there have been some releases to the mayors when they meet, and I think the expectation is that the mayors and the chiefs that meet with the chief public health officer then turn around and disseminate the information. I'm not sure that that's been happening, but there has been information put out about, for example, the vaccination schedules. I do see some of that information, but I do not distribute that to council. Anything that comes from the NWPAC is left to the mayor to distribute. What I have seen that council may have missed is there has been information on the vaccination schedule, but all of that stuff shows up on cabin radio too, which is where I get a lot of it myself, no different than anybody else. And so for those of you who don't read cabin radio, rollouts of vaccines are going to the larger communities that have long-term care homes. It's going to the long-term care homes and some of the healthcare providers there, at which point then it's going to at-risk people in the smaller communities where they don't have definitive medical care. And that's going to continue through to late February, March, when the second rounds of vaccines show up, and the rest of us may have the opportunity to access the vaccine. I think that things get blurry once you get up to March and February, or February and March, because I'm not sure that the GNWP has a true understanding of how many doses of vaccine they will receive in the next round. Other than that, there's talk about ensuring that the frontline workers in healthcare facilities get vaccination. There was some comments coming from the city of Yellowknife about, hey, what about first responders like fire and ambulance? And I would suggest even again other essential services providers. It's a doctor or a nurse are not much use if you do not have water, right? But I don't know that there's consideration being put into those other essential service providers. Other than that, while I stay away from Facebook like the plague, I have heard that there's been some mutterings out there about the sewage COVID sampler that we have in our lift station. There is nothing nefarious going on with the COVID sampler in the town lift station. The Department of Health asked us if we wanted to put it in the lift station. We said, sure. It plays on the fact that COVID will remain in sewage for upwards of approximately 30 days. So if there is COVID in a community, it will show up in the sewage. And so all this machine does is regularly sample the sewage, and then it gets shipped to Yellowknife for testing. There is an article again on cabin radio, but the whole system works. In Yellowknife, ENR is doing the sampling. In the town of Fort Smith, it was just easier for us to do the sampling for the GNWT because our guys are in the buildings every day anyways. If you already know there's COVID in the community, the sampling isn't going to tell you anything. But if you think you're safe because there's not supposed to be any, and the machine picks them up, that's a little red light for the public health officials to call the people that recently came to the community and are in self-isolation, or perhaps do some testing to see if maybe someone's positive after all, and that way they can be that much more certain in ensuring they isolate and get the medical care they need in a timely manner. That's all that's happening. No one's updating.
Thank you for debunking all the conspiracy theorists. What I saw on the Department of Health and Social Services website, I think it was yesterday, was that third week in January, exact date to be determined for high priority residents of Fort Smith to have access to vaccinations. That's directly on the NWT website. Exact date unknown, but that time range. there's a list there of who qualifies for high priority, and that's a good point. I know the GWT has talked a lot about the engagement that they've been doing with Indigenous governments and elected officials. Discuss with the mayor whether or not who the town views as essential services are being included in those lists. Any questions or comments on the COVID-19 update? Okay, so we're on to other business. Briefing note, Portsmouth Housing Authority appointment. There's a briefing note attached to this, a follow-up discussion from December council meeting. Mr. Morrison.
To be honest, this one got written by Ms. Reed, and it's just an information note for council. There was lots of, I guess, uncertainty about the process. To summarize, council can approve a term for as long as it wants, although there might be some change in the horizon. And that as far as how the town has acted historically, there's been a variety of approaches throughout the years.
Okay, thank you. It's a very informative briefing note, ranging all the way back to December 19th, 2000. The legacy of appointments to the Housing Corporation. Sorry, Councilor West, what do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the administration for actually for putting this together for us. As I mentioned in last month's meeting, I think that a lot of times what council might perceive the housing authority position to be might be not necessarily in line with what it actually is. And I would be fully supportive of decoupling it again from being a council position. My issue with was when it came up is that appointing it as a council position beyond a council's term reeks of cronyism. So if we wanted to return it and make our own appointment, I'm fine with that. There's a public process that would go out to that. As long as we follow that, I'm totally fine to decouple it from council. Again, it's about finding people who are interested in doing the work. And it's not exactly a seat of power. It's a lot of nitty-gritty work in detail. So if we wanted to, in the interest of getting people to apply for a longer term and getting it up, decoupling it from council, I think it's great. Thanks for the information from a historical perspective.
Thank you. So, sorry, I misspoke. I said Housing Corporation. Of course, I meant the local housing authority. There was a request from the Housing Authority for a town of Portsmouth rep to be appointed. Does council, a member of council, have a recommendation, whether it's a public process or a council appointment? They don't have a particular recommendation they'd like to make at this time. Councilor Westphal?
Yeah, I recommend that the town of Portsmouth advertise the position as a standard public process goes to build to see if there's an interest in the community and all those who are interested to submit their names for council consideration.
Thank you. For someone who would like to second that? Councilor Brett? Everyone understood the recommendation? Clear on the recommendation? Sorry. Councilor Cox?
So councilors who might be interested, would they apply as a member of the public? Yes. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Any further discussion on this item? So we have a similar process that we follow for DEA. Other boards are ultimately appointed by the minister anyway. No recommendation. No further discussion. Looking for a show of hands in favor of the recommendation. And that's carried out unanimously, and we'll go to the regular meeting of council for formal approval. Okay, excusing of councilors. Looking for a recommendation. I know Councilor Prissinger notified that she is absent for this meeting this evening. I know that the mayor has been away. I'm not sure her exact status, whether she's still on vacation. I'm not sure if administration is otherwise.
What was your act?
I can't recall what your acting term was for deputy mayor. Was the term set at the council meeting?
No.
We did, okay, because I know I had talked with the mayor about setting a term for acting, and I think there's gonna be some discussion with you regarding your availability, but perhaps because you were available throughout, the term wasn't set.
It was essentially a month, 2 weeks down south, and 2 weeks self isolation period, carrying through to the middle of January. But so looking for a recommendation, excuse absence of councilors. Councilor Westphal?
Recommend Mayor Napier and Councilor Pritzker be excused for the preceding meeting.
Thank you. Looking for a second for the motion, Councilor McCarthy. Discussion, I guess we already had the discussion, but there's further comments. Seeing none, show of hands in favor. Thank you, let's carry unanimously. Okay, the next meeting is February 2nd, 2021, or we will work this week to identify a workshop date to re-examine council priorities at some point within the next couple of weeks, based on council's availability. So please scan your watch for that email and respond to it so that we can schedule that in a timely manner. Look for a motion to adjourn. Councilor Cox?
I move that the meeting be adjourned at 8:03 p.m.
Second by Councilor Brett. Discussion? Campbell's already getting up. Show of hands in favor. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And again, I wish everyone a happy new year.